let's see what. Well, again, you talk about social media. I had someone mention that it was a great example of why the ancient Greeks thought that we shouldn't have a democracy, because everyone shouldn't have as loud a voice as cooler heads. And you see it, and I think the statistic that came out with Facebook during the last election was that 78% of the reshared things were the phony stuff, and only 20% of the truth got reshared. And it's human nature. Everybody wants to be the first to introduce the wildest thing. So truth really didn't figure in there. They just said, oh, a guy did this. And
we deal with that all the time in law enforcement. All information flows up. We're a paramilitary organization. So from that cop to the detective to the supervisor to the commanding officer of the precinct and onward up to the commissioner. And sometimes we want to get it there so fast we lose some of the importance of the message. And we have to back it up, slow it down. In the media world, they're always wondering, well, can you tell us about it? Well, we can't yet. There's victims involved. We have to notify the families. Some of the investigation. And if I gave it out to you now, I may not be correct in what I'm giving you because it's so fluid and changing at the moment. Right.
Well, I think, just to cite an example, is like, I think it was one of our local officials was in court, and he was exonerated, and I think people were surprised. I had the reporter on the phone who had written the story about, and he clarified that idea that, he doesn't just have to be guilty of some illegal activity. They also have to physically tie it to his job. Now, the populace didn't know that, which is why they were so upset. Mm-hmm. So, wait a minute, you caught him dead to rights. Why isn't he being convicted? And, well, because there's this other part of it. I think that behooves the police department to let these people know exactly the stresses that you work under. I can't just grab a guy off the street and say, okay, he's guilty, let's throw him in jail, and boom, boom, boom. Even though that's what you might want to see.
Right.
So, those constraints, and I think there are probably quite a few of those that we have no idea about.
We have obviously the United States Constitution, the state constitution, county rules and bylaws, and of course our own rules and bylaws that we have to follow. And constantly changing court cases that change the way we police. What kind of force can we use? When can we use that force? We're in a world now that we teach our cops de-escalate, de-escalate, de-escalate. Bring it back down a notch. Use your voice, your mouth is your first weapon, and your last weapon is your firearm. But in between that, there's a whole host of things that you can do. Introducing tasers, when we introduce tasers to law enforcement, it's a non-lethal way to handle an individual that may be emotionally disturbed or intoxicated or just very enraged at the moment.
Right.
Using that taser is not lethal, so it brings them down, controls them, even though it may look
doesn't look
inhumane,
fun. Yeah,
right, and not fun. Right. But the truth of the matter is, it's better than the next alternative. So again, we teach de-escalation all the time in this new academy. By doing it the way we're going to, we're building this academy over by what we call our EVOC track, Emergency Vehicle Operations course. That is the old runway that used to be right here in Mitchell Field.
Yes.
That's still there. That the beginning of that runway right off of the Meadowbrook Parkway. We're building around that so we can continue to have our EVOC training kept there. But eventually we're going to build what's called the Tactical Village. And in the Tactical Village, there will be a real bank building. There will be a real coffee shop. There will be a real Cape, a real Colonial, and a 3-story apartment building, if you will. There'll be a train on there with a train track, with obviously a platform. All the things that we've learned from our history, because we've learned from our mistakes so we don't repeat them. So we constantly need to learn and train our cops for the future.
Right.
But alongside of that will come the technology. Teaching our cops about the usage and good and bad from social media. Teaching our cops about the usage of cameras, good and bad. Mm-hmm. This academy will be a state-of-the-art training facility that will allow for us we trained over 1,000 police officers in the last 5 years through our academy. It's a 7-month training academy, both physical and academic. So they'll be there for the state-of-the-art gym and the tactical warehouse to train in, but then they'll go to the classrooms, multifaceted classrooms that will allow us to turn it into a training facility one way or turn it into a classroom or a lecture hall.
Right.
Then we also are building a 500-seat auditorium. The police department of the county of Nassau does not have a 500-seat auditorium anywhere. When we do a graduation, we go to the universities, Hofstra, Adelphi, Nassau Community, and ask to use their facilities. And sometimes we even have to pay the rent for that usage.
Right.
So again, that saves money. We've spoken with many of our bigger entities here in Nassau County, like Northwell Hospital. They need more training space. We can provide that. We can provide that with a cost. It'll generate a revenue. Our federal partners who go out to Quantico and a place called Fletsy to train, they can train here now.
Wow.
We will have a state-of-the-art tactical village that you can fire simunitions, so you're not firing weapons. It's like airsoft.
Right.
You'll do real car stops in real time, real shooting, real tactical with airsoft and simunitions, so no real firearms are being fired.
Right.
But it gives them real-life training.
Yeah.
Also, the real emotional person that comes up to you. How do you handle it? So when we can take a cop and put him as close as we can to the real environment that he will face, the better he'll act, the more calm he'll be in his decision-making, and the more confident he'll be in his decision-making.
Yeah. I would love to be a fly on the wall at one of those. That sounds like controlled mayhem.
Yeah.
That you keep it all within a certain area, but let's go for the real deal.
In a split second, you make the difference between life and death, and it's a very, very tough decision for an officer that has to live with it. We've had situations where our cops had to make those decisions, and people don't realize is that what the cop now has to go home to, that same empty house that everybody else does, and start to go through the process of understanding it. But we give them the resources. We have our employee assistance and peer support that works with them.
Yeah. Whew. Wow. Well, I did get, what was the one question? Oh, somebody was asking about red light cameras. How do you feel about red light cameras in general?
So accidents are down on the road and deaths are down on the road.
Okay, that answers the question.
So that's a good thing.
Right.
Red light cameras, at this point, you kind of know where they all are. We're creatures of habit. We travel the same way every time, right? So I know the 5 intersections that I pass every day on the way to work that have a red light camera. But sometimes people still go and just avoid the camera. They're in a rush. And maybe that $80 to $150 ticket will keep them accountable next time.
Oh, that's for sure. That's for sure. I think the real thing that most of us see, and it's the old thing, where's a cop when you need him? Only because texting in the cars, people, and you can spot it a mile away. The light turns green, 3 cars go, and 1 car just sits there. And you say, well, gee, I can't imagine what he's doing.
Yeah.
And, if you get up and they're on the parkway, I've seen them. In rush hour especially, I think, well, I'm not going so fast, so I can brush my hair and do my texting. And it's incredible that people still, they just won't let it go, but it's a certain amount of an addiction.
Yeah. So the number one danger to us on the road is when we have drunk drivers, as we all know, the damage that they can do. Yeah. And, of course, we'd go out and we'd do major sweeps, if you will, for DWIs for the weekend, of a holiday weekend.
Right.
We now do that with texting. We have weekends where we go out and it's, look, the focus is texting. There's grant-funded state programs that we need to go out and go after the people that are texting. Especially the kids today. Sometimes they're a lot smarter than we are, and they've found ways to use that phone without taking their hands off the wheel and being focused. And the technology in the cars are better. But you need to really be attentive. I 3 teenagers at home, and when my wife, who taught them how to drive, would teach them, when you get to the intersection, when that light turns green, don't just go. Count to 5. Just count to 5.
You know what the law says? I've read it a couple of times. You may proceed when the intersection is clear. So if there's a car in that intersection and you go and you hit him, it's your fault. But
it's just like, take the 5 seconds, count it off, let somebody blow the horn at you, then you're probably safe. Look both ways, even though the light's green.
Yeah, because and the truth is, especially for kids, when you're teaching them that, you only get one chance.
Correct.
You can't make a big mistake and say, oh,
you don't get to pull back.
There's no backseas, but it is really scary. And now I think the average speed on Southern State Parkway is, the average, I'm going to say, 65. And I always wonder if people, are you really a good enough driver to drive that fast? You see people doing 80, and my question to some of my friends is, do you ever see what one of those things look like when it hits a wall?
7,000 pounds of steel comes to a complete stop.
Flying. And you just say, okay. That's why I have big cars. I also wanted to tell you, I have a friend who was a Nassau County police inspector who was retired, and he lives down in Florida. And he read my note. Dan Lashansky wanted to tell
Good
you.
Man.
Oh, you know Dan?
I know him well.
Okay,
he was a trainer in our academy.
There you go. He wanted me to tell you in person that he thinks you're doing a fabulous job, and thank you.
Thank you to him.
He wrote that on my. Send me a message, and I said, okay, I'll make sure I tell him. So I didn't know you'd know him.
Oh, I knew him well.
I figured.
When I went through the academy as a recruit, he was there. He worked in the academy.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah. And I think you got 34 years in.
Yeah, I'm in my 35th now. January, I'll complete 35 years.
Were you 12 when you started?
I was 21 and walking the streets of Bed-Stuy.
Really? Man. So when are you going to write your book?
Long after I retire.
Yeah.
I think I'll take a little rest when I do pick that day, but that's no time soon. I got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, well, like I said, I got to give you a lot of credit because I don't know when you got time to sleep.
We have a serious opiate crisis in Nassau County, as we do in the country. Mm-hmm. School safety is on everybody's plate. Anybody that has a child in school or going to school, that's the first thing. What are you doing for school safety for us? So we have a big school resource program going on right now. We have our 5-pronged process that we're going out and fighting opiates. We're down 30% in overdoses in Nassau County. That's a good thing. Yeah. But we're nowhere near the finish line. And then on top of it, we have a gang issue, which is small, but enough that we have to deal with it. And we deal with crime and terrorism. So there's a lot of different things moving the pieces around on the board. We have a great police department. I have a great leadership group around me, and I get total support from our county exec and our legislators. They've been fabulous with us so far.
Well, it's good to hear. That is very good to hear. I know they're coming in here. Let's see. What time you got, Kim?
It is 4:29.
Really? Oh, sorry, guys. Listen, we're going to keep talking. So,
There's no way, no worries.
Well, listen, I really have to thank you. Nassau County Police Commissioner Patrick J. Ryder came in here and he's actually sat and talked with us. I hope to do it again sometime.
We will,
and
absolutely.
I do have some friends who asked me to ask you if they could have PBA cards.
We'll work that out.
Right.